Stand to welcome the gospel. Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 9th chapter. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hands on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. This is the gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. Well, today begins the 1,376 Sundays in ordinary time, or the green season, as we call it. You know, it just seems like it just goes on forever and ever and ever, and we're just always in green. It's a season dedicated to growth, which is why we usually do green paraments and things like that. It makes us think of stuff that grows. And so it's fitting that we start this season with the call of Matthew. It's a really short little segment in there. Matthew's working at his tax booth. Jesus walks by and sees him and says, "Follow me," and boom, there he goes. The technical term, boom. Sort of like Emerald's bam, you know. And then Matthew throws a dinner party for him. There's predictable grumbling by the Pharisees because that's their gift to the world. And then we have some stories of some healing and a revival and things like that. But I want to focus with you today just on that very first part, the call of Matthew, because it's so very important. And it's just one tiny little bit there, but there's more depth that I want to tease out. I want to get a snapshot of exactly what this looks like when Jesus calls Matthew. And I want to do that with a painting we're going to put up on the screen for you. This is the Call of St. Matthew, painted by Caravaggio. And it's a fascinating piece, and I want to just tease out a little bit of what's going on to get us to think just a little bit more about what this scene was like. So you got all the way on the far right, the guy who's pointing, that's Jesus. And he's walking by and he's going, "You, Matthew, I want you, come follow me." Now there's a guy right next to Jesus who doesn't look like he's particularly happy about this. Really? Matthew? You want that guy over there? Jesus, let's rethink this. Let's maybe stop this a little bit. But he's not the only one in this painting who's surprised to be getting called by Jesus. The guy in the center pointing to himself, that's Matthew. And he's going, "Me? You want to call me?" Anybody ever had that response when you feel like God's calling you to something and you're like, "Really, me?" Yeah, a few of you back there. I'm a pastor. God called me to do this, and I promise you for the first 10 years that was going on, I was going, Me? No. There's no way you want me. Matthew in particular, though it's no surprise, though, that both Matthew and this other guy over here are shocked that Matthew's getting called. Matthew's profession was as a tax collector. I mean, do we like the tax collector? No. Boy, that was said definitively no. Matthew was a tax collector. At the time that this story is going on in Israel, they were occupied by the Romans. And the Romans had this worldwide empire. And there's two big things you need when you're going to have a worldwide empire. The first thing you need is really good organizational skills, because that's a lot to manage. The second thing you need is you need money. So you extract it from the people you are occupying. Makes it nice and easy. Now, the best way they figured out to do this was to get their tax collectors to be the people who lived in the land that they occupied. So, you occupy good Jewish boys and girls, you make sure you find a good Jewish boy to be your tax collector. There's an important reason for this. He would know all the people in his area. He'd know if they paid or not. And if they didn't pay and they were maybe out on the limb, he knows where to find them. He knows all the places that they hide. And generally, tax collectors tend to be fairly burly guys who like to carry around iron rods, and they can, kneecap you if you don't. So they viewed tax collectors as turncoats, as betrayers of their own people, working with the other side. Oh, and by the way, there's the prescribed amount that Rome needs to get, so they have that number. But then you also put your service fee on top. You know how service fees work, right? So he's enriching himself while taking money from those around him. So they don't like Matthew very much, and Matthew knows that. So this guy over here preventing Jesus from calling Matthew, kind of got good reason to do that. You don't want to have a guy like Matthew as your buddy. And Matthew's shocked about it as well. So certainly this would be a shocking scene as it unfolded. Now there's something else that Matthew's doing with his other hand. One's pointing at himself in surprise, and you probably can't see it as well in here. So just when you get home, Google the Call of St. Matthew by Caravaggio, and it'll come up. You can kind of zoom in on it. He's got his hands on the coins that he's been collecting. He's kind of holding on to them because he's got this idea in his mind that I might have to let that go. When you're following Jesus, it's kind of hard to be extorting your neighbors, right? It's kind of hard to be working for an oppressor when you're following Jesus. So we have right here in this moment a snapshot of the shock that Jesus would call me, the surprise that Jesus would call me, but also the realization that if I say yes, and we know he says yes, this money that I love very dearly is going to go away. And that's the lesson for us today. Each one of us, I assure you, are called by God. It's not just pastors, it's not just apostles. Everybody is called by God. The thing is, to follow God, to answer the call of Jesus, means there's a cost. There's always a cost to everything, right? So there's something that you have to give up. Now, this is where your brains are going, oh crap, we got tricked into a stewardship sermon. It's not what I'm talking about, although for some of you. No, accepting the call of Jesus to follow him means we have to give something up. When couples come to me for marriage, we sit down and we talk, and I always tell them, On your wedding day, you're going to say yes to one another. But that yes means that you're saying a no to the entire rest of the world, right? Because you can't say yes to everybody when you're married. Otherwise, you come back to me for counseling and all that kind of stuff. So, with every yes that we say, there's also a no that comes in there. And that no is different for each one of you. It might be money for some of you that you have to say no to in following Jesus. It might be an addiction you have to say no to. It might even be a job you have to say no to. The list can go on and on and on of what you're called to give up to make space in your life for following Jesus. But it's not just a one-time thing. Darn, it'd be easy if it was, wasn't it? Just check the box, get the paper stamped, and you're all good to go. It's a everyday thing. Because you don't say yes to God and then all of a sudden you've got it all figured out, right? Anybody got it all figured out? Nope. It's a day after day after day process. It's a struggle. It's something we would call growth. Again, that's why this ties into this growth season of Pentecost, of ordinary time. And growth is hard. Growth has really hard work involved in it. Now, again, it'd be great if we could just snap our fingers and be right there, done, have it all figured out, right? And I'm sure you see those people out in the world who have really grown a lot, and you're like, wow, they've got their act together. I want to be them when I grow up. Anybody got those people in your life? A few of you do? Yeah? Maybe as a church, collectively, we can look at other churches and we're like, wow, that church has really got it going on. It'd be really great if we were like them. There's a little phrase for that. It's called the grass is greener on the other side. And here's what I want to challenge you to do today. Stop looking at the other churches or the other people and be like, I want to be like them. Stop admiring the greenness of their grass and in turn, water your own grass. And that's a baptismal thing. That's a Lutheran thing. Because this calling that we get from God, that all starts in baptism. And it's so important that we return to that every single day. Just like you need to water your yard so it'll be green, you got to water yourself in remembering your baptism. Luther said it this way: when you wash your face in the morning, remember your baptism. So when you take a shower in the morning, I hope you do that at some point during the day. Remember your baptism. Do this. Your spouse will love it. Get a marker and write on the wall, I am baptized, in the shower. It'll help you sell your house, won't it, Caroline? Yeah. See, the realtor says it'll help you sell your house. It'll be good. In whatever way you do it, remember that you are baptized. Remember that you are called. And that calling means we have to give things up. We have to make space in our lives for the growth that's going to happen. I've told y'all before, my wife is super into houseplants and things like that. We have 187 of them, and I'm not joking. We have a lot. It's a thing. But sometimes you have to actually clean out a lot of that plant to make space for additional growth. So you're a called person, and you're here today, which means you've said yes. So now it's the hard work of making space, of saying no to things, and doing that hard work of growing, both as an individual and us collectively here as a church. Remember that you're baptized. Remember that you're called, and that God calls you to growth. So let me invite you to that growth today. Amen.